Sonic Frontiers! If you've ever wanted to watch Sonic operate heavy machinery and play Tetris, well, this is the game for you. For those who don't know, Sonic Frontiers is the latest game in the mainline Sonic franchise. I don't count Shadow Generations or Sonic Crossroads, alright? One of them is technically a prequel, and the other one has SpongeBob in it, so shut up. Everyone likes this game. I mean, IGN gave it a whopping 7 out of 10, and hey, that's about as good as it gets for Sonic. I mean, I don't really see them giving high scores that often. Whoa! That got a 10 out of 10? Fuck. Frontiers was able to do something pretty unique. It mixed both the adventure and boost formula together into something that pissed off both sides equally. See, Frontiers was the first game in a while that reviewed really well, and allowed Sonic fans to be a little bit proud of a series that they dedicated their whole life to. No longer were we just considered gay furries. Now we had a solid 7 out of 10 video game, and a surprisingly successful movie trilogy. I think a big part of why Frontiers ended up being so well received was that it was something new. It was exciting to see Sonic in an open world environment. The UI was clean, Sonic was throwing hands, and levels were filled with like a million rails. See, for a long time, Sonic games were kind of stuck in this outdated arcade type design. They were short levels where you just kind of ran to the end, and after a couple of acts, you collect all the Chaos Emeralds, turn super, and save the day. Lives and timers were still part of the game's core design, and I feel like at a certain point, we just kind of needed to move on. The game isn't really open world, it's broken up into 5 islands, 3 of which are the exact same fucking thing. They aren't structured like traditional Sonic levels either, they're more like giant sandboxes to just do random shit in. There's a fair bit of exploring you get to do here, and the more puzzles you solve, the more the game's map opens up. And by that, I mean you get more rails. I'm not sure why Frontiers has such a hard-on for placing rails everywhere. See, this has always been one of the biggest challenges when making an open-world Sonic game. How do you make a game fun to play if Sonic can clear the entire map in a couple of minutes? Well, the answer is to fill the game with puzzles and long, drawn-out enemy interactions. The use of puzzles, collectibles, and opening more of the island over time is probably the smartest way to keep players engaged. Now, are all the puzzles fun? No. I don't think a game of Simon Says or kicking a ball into a glowy ring is all that interesting. A large majority of the puzzles here aren't very challenging, but they also don't drag on too long either. In some cases. Frontiers has an awful difficulty spike when it comes to puzzle solving. You might get lucky with a few collect the item before the timer runs out, or press a button to open a door. Kind of figured that would happen. But the game will, without warning, throw something so ridiculously frustrating at you, you're gonna want to stop playing the game. I'm obviously talking about the fucking laser section. This shit is literally one of the worst design parts of any Sonic game I've ever played. Nothing you've done up until this point is going to help you solve this puzzle either. You just kind of have to figure this shit out. And don't give me that, well, if you look at the markings on the ground. I did that and it didn't help. Not all the game's puzzles are this abstract. Others, well, pretty easy to figure out, can take up to 20 minutes to do. The crane and the pinball minigame are two pretty good examples of this. Not hard, just annoyingly long. They aren't all bad, obviously. I actually really hope we get to see more of these in the game because some of them are pretty fun. There's a decent variety of puzzles, and you know, sometimes unlocking a rail that takes me from one end of the island to the other was worth the 30 minutes I spent cutting grass. A lot of the puzzles resolve around Sonic's new Psyloop move. It's used for both solving puzzles and fighting enemies, so props to Sega for doing a pretty interesting thing there. You create this little trail of energy, and then when it's connected, you can throw enemies into the air, you can break shields, you can get rings from the ground, you can basically solve 99% of the challenges in the game, and yes, you can draw cock and balls with it too. Sonic's moveset in general has seen a massive change. You still got your little spinny jump move, but now Sonic can kick, punch, shoot fucking Hadoukens, Fury Rush, and a bunch of other things that take up to 15 seconds to finish. I'm actually surprised at how good the combat in the game is. It's not as complex as, say, the Werehog from Sonic Unleashed, and at times the moves themselves feel more like I'm just watching Sonic do something rather than playing it. But hey, it has a skill tree, so that's something. While you don't get every move straight away, it's incredibly easy to max this thing out pretty early on in the game, and I'd recommend doing that because otherwise Sonic is a little too weak and the fighting can become a little bit tedious, with some of these enemies taking fucking forever to kill. Stop doing that. There's even some recovery moves you can learn which are very satisfying to pull off. There's these annoying shield enemies that are usually a fucking chore to get rid of, but look at that, boom, they're gone. As much fun as the combat can be, I do miss how fun it used to be just running full speed into an enemy or a family sitting in their car. You can't really do that here since it doesn't actually kill anything, and fuck, it doesn't even protect you anymore. Another big change here is that the game now allows you to customize Sonic's control. See, you get these slider things which can be used to affect Sonic's running and turning speeds, along with how much momentum he carries, but if you actually want to enjoy the game, I turn them all the way up. I do get wider here. A big criticism of Sonic games is how they can be pretty hard to control, I mean, they aren't exactly the most easy to pick up games out there. Seriously, go watch anyone play a Sonic game for the first time. This shit does not look fun. It's not quite adventure levels of control. Sonic's jump especially is something I think needed to be improved. See, Sonic jumps in this really wide arc, and it doesn't matter how much momentum you had before you made the jump, it always kind of feels the same. It's not that noticeable when you're just running around, it only really becomes a problem when you try to correct yourself after making a jump too late or when you're trying to land on a smaller platform. Seriously, try this out for yourself, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. What's funny is when you look back at the older games, they never really had this issue. Look at how much control you have over Sonic's jump and positioning in the adventure games, Heroes, or shit, even Sonic 06. I know it might sound like I'm nitpicking, but considering this is a platforming game, you think they would have put a little bit more attention into the jumping physics. I do enjoy how Sonic controls, it's very tight and responsive, and I actually had a lot of fun just running around the map. Even at top speed, I didn't really run into any issues. This is probably the most control we've had when boosting. I mean, you can very easily make a turn and do a full 360, whereas in the previous games, it kind of just locked you into one direction. Now, it doesn't feel as fast as Unleashed. I think maybe changing the camera angle and adding some speed lines would have helped there, but I never felt like Sonic was too slow. The one annoying thing about it though is that if you let go of the boost, Sonic just stops immediately. I don't know why this game has such a fear of letting Sonic keep his speed, but okay. I think some of the most fun you'll have here is watching Sonic fly into the air and reach parts of the level that otherwise required you to slow down and do a bunch of shitty 2D platforming or wall climbing. You can go really far sometimes as well. If you jump off a rail at max speed, you'll end up on like the other side of the map. How do I get down? There are a couple of things I would change though. For starters, I don't like how Sonic can't grab onto a ledge. I mean, you could do this in Sonic Lost World and it really helped with not falling to your death. Also meant you wouldn't have to rely on springs and bumpers or these. Seriously, why do we need these? Can't I just run up the wall or find something to climb? The game does have that option, by the way, but only sometimes. I really hate when games do this, by the way, restricting a player's moveset, in this case a really useful one, to a specific section of a level makes no fucking sense. Sometimes you can't even run up a hill, you have to use the drop dash. I mean, why make the movement this convoluted? Why does it matter if Sonic is in a ball or not? If I run fast enough, I should be able just to go up the thing. You know, for a game that features a lot of rail grinding, you think they would have done something to spice it up. I mean, since Sonic 06, rail grinding is pretty much just a case of landing on the thing and watch Sonic go. There's no skill anymore. I think this would have been a great opportunity to bring back the balancing aspect from Sonic Adventure 2. Maybe increase the amount of times you need to switch between rails or avoid these little spiky things. There's definitely parts of the island that have that, but the majority of the rails you unlock around the island are just this. By far the biggest change with Frontiers is the combat section. Now, Sonic using his fists is nothing new. In fact, he slapped his friends around like a lot. Maybe if you kept your mouth shut, this wouldn't keep happening. I do still enjoy it though, and hey, it's nice not having to rely on the homing attack all the time. There's a lot of different moves you can learn, and after maxing out Sonic's stats, you can clear some of these fights within seconds. The type of enemy encounters range from the typical Sonic jumps on the thing and it dies, to full-on mini-bosses with their own unique music and attacks. The variety is actually pretty big here. I really liked fighting the Spider and Squid Guardians, but rely on actually catching up to the thing first before you can get a chance to hit it. What's cool is that you can just see these things like hanging around in the background. You even get this really sick dubstep jump scare when he notices you. The sumo fight had me bouncing all around the place, and the shark was pretty neat. I think the Ninja Guardian has to be my favorite one. It has this really fun parry phase where the camera goes all slow and you have to find the real one. It's pretty cool. Now, I will say that a lot of the enemies are designed in the shape of a penis. I mean, fuck, they're not even trying to hide it sometimes. There are also a few I didn't really care for, mainly Ghost. I found it annoyingly confusing, and even when I figured out what the hell I was supposed to do, I still wasn't really having fun. The Tank Guardian drags on for way too long, and the stupid fat jelly creature, I just know this is someone's fetish, okay? Another small annoyance is that once you get in with a certain distance, the game will force you into a battle. For smaller enemies, or ones where you can just endlessly shoot lasers out of your dick, it's not really an issue, but for the more complex and time-consuming ones, yeah, it can get a little bit annoying. Like with any game, once you figure out the fastest combo to defeat enemies, it's very hard to use anything but that. Some of the moves feel more like I'm just watching Sonic fight rather than actually playing, and that's probably my biggest issue with the game's combat. There is a very clear disconnect between the game's core gameplay style, you know, the running and jumping, and the combat sections. You very rarely mix these two gameplay styles together. Besides the obvious homing attack, I feel like Sonic's moveset for fighting is locked into these specific events, and there's almost no flow between the action I was doing before an enemy encounter and the fight itself. With all the moves you have here, why can't I use these to navigate the island? In Sonic Heroes, I could use the tornado move to circle around an enemy, but I could also reach a higher platform, I could get more air after a jump, and I could even kill a turtle. But in Frontiers, the same move is here, but it's only used for combat, nothing else. And you do a lot of climbing in this game, and the level design falls into the old habit of just having springs, balloons, and dash pads everywhere to guide Sonic. You know, instead of all this automation, why can't I just use the other abilities I've learned to help Sonic move around? I hate having to keep comparing this to Unleashed, but the Werehog's overall gameplay was designed in such a way that complemented the use of combat moves for both platforming and fighting. The extra long arms and mid-air attacks are great examples of this. I can grab onto ledges and poles to help myself get around, but I can also smack the shit out of some poor robot. Sonic's overall movement here feels very unified and smooth, and I don't feel that same disconnect like I do with Frontiers. It would have been also pretty useful to have a couple of more moves designed around Sonic's speed, like maybe being able to punch while boosting, or having some type of screen nuke that you could charge up while running. You know, something to easily get rid of those fucking shield enemies. Again, I'm not saying the combat here is bad. I still have fun, and the sound design for some of these attacks makes killing an enemy really satisfying. I just wish it didn't feel so separated from the main gameplay style. Now, Frontiers isn't just all about running around and exploring. In classic Sonic Team fashion, they brought back the boost gameplay. Except now it's a lot slower, and most of the levels take place in Green Hill Zone. Motherfucker. I really don't get why these are here. Like, they aren't bad or anything. I did have fun when playing them, and they're surprisingly open-ended. Like, shit, multiple paths in a Sonic game? Who knew? It's more that they just weren't really needed. Look, we all know Sonic games don't really get the polish that they need. It's not uncommon for the games to be rushed out before all the bugs and glitches were fixed. It's unfortunately just how the gaming industry is. Unless you're Nintendo, because god damn it, those games just work straight out of the box. There was around a 5-year gap between Forces and Frontiers, and I can't think of another time when there was this long of a window between mainline Sonic games. Now, do I think that Sonic Team was working on this for the whole 5 years? No. The only thing that these Cyberspace levels did was take away development time, which could have been used elsewhere. Maybe some more level locations, or fixing the turbo pop-in. Who knows? Sky's the limit. My guess is that the open world and combat aspect of the game wasn't really what the general audience was expecting from a Sonic game. So, by including the traditional boost gameplay, which already had a pretty good reputation, meant that people were more likely to buy the game. That or 90% of level assets were already made. I don't fucking know. The game's explanation for these levels being reused is they're all part of Sonic's memories, which are becoming corrupt, but the only original location is the city highway one, and you know what? I actually really liked it. The structure of the level design, the military helicopters, and the skateboard. Holy shit, look at them go! Reminds me a lot of Sonic Adventure 2, and it's a shame we didn't get more like this. Look, I like Sonic 2, but Chemical Plant isn't even the best level from that game. Alright, we don't need 4 fucking versions of this thing. And Sky Sanctuary? Well, actually, you're pretty cool, so you can stay. Don't get me wrong, they look good, especially when the levels take place at sunset or night, but I am so burnt out on Green Hill Zone. It's not just the level locations that were reused, the actual level design is taken from the likes of Sonic Unleashed, Sonic Adventure 2, and Generations. Reusing the same level design from an older game is actually a pretty neat way to do a callback. It's a lot more subtle than just giving us the actual level again. And for fans who have played a majority of Sonic games, recognizing a certain piece of those levels feels a lot more rewarding than just having the game waved in your face. Yeah, we get it, Sonic Adventure was fun, but that doesn't really work when the new version is worse than the original. The overall design of Frontiers doesn't really mix with the fast-paced nature of the original Boost games, and the result is really bad. You can see this very clearly when it recreates modern Green Hill Zone from Generations. In the original game, Sonic's boost and overall speed is carried over into every single action you perform. So when you're drifting around a bend or performing a homing attack, you can feel how those movements all flow together. Every action is connected by Sonic's overall speed. When you play the same level in Frontiers, you can really see how bad the game's engine is. The most noticeable difference is just how slow Sonic is. But the bigger issue is the lack of flow between your actions. Running, jumping, homing attacking, rail grinding, all of these have set speeds. So it doesn't matter what movement you were doing before, the game will always have Sonic be locked into a set speed range. And you can see this really clearly when you jump after boosting. Like, all of your momentum is gone. Whenever you get launched into the air, Sonic controls really slow and stiff, and you end up just kind of hovering around for a couple of seconds, and it just feels really janky. One of the funnest things to do in the original games was chaining together like 3 homing attacks in a row and just blasting off at full speed. But Frontiers adds this like 2-second delay between each homing attack, and it fucking resets your speed every time. It's now faster and more beneficial to just skip these. Every movement here feels like it has this stop and start drag to it. Now, there are still times when you can maintain some level of a flow. These were usually found in the original levels since they are designed around the Frontiers engine. The level design here complements Sonic's control. They tend to be bigger and have a bunch of different routes to take. Things like rails and balloons are used more often here, and they definitely help Sonic's movement feel a bit more free and less rigid. Still not as good as the likes of Unleashed or Generations, but big improvement over some of the other levels. They still lack things like a dynamic camera angle and set pieces, and I don't think any one stage really stood out to me, but the overall time I had here was more positive than negative. Except for the 2D ones. I don't even like these in good Sonic games, so having to play them at like 1/10 of the normal speed was just fucking awful. Like, I'm sorry, if you think this is good, you need better standards. Also, the music choice. They went with this weird EDM techno type sound, and I don't really think it fits. I get that they're designed to go along with the cyberspace aspect of the level, but they all just kind of sound the same to me. Sonic soundtracks are at their best when you incorporate a bunch of different genres. Sticking to just the one made everything kind of blend in together, and honestly, I couldn't even tell you which track is for what level. And that wasn't really a problem in the older Sonic games. I don't want to keep going on about the cyberspace levels because in theory they are entirely optional. See, Frontiers has like a shit ton of collectibles that you need to advance the story. You got memory tokens to free your friends, keys to unlock the Chaos Emeralds, these red and blue glowy orb things to improve your attack and defense, gears to actually unlock cyberspace levels, tiny rock guys which you bring to an even bigger rock guy who just increases your ring and speed level, and purple tokens used to go fishing with Big the Cat. Fuck. When you beat a level, you get a vault key, which you're going to have to use to unlock all the Chaos Emeralds, because that's what the game's about. But you can kind of just find these by running around and looping in a circle. Or buy them off Big, because he sells about everything. This method takes way longer, so it's heavily implied that you just play at least some of the levels, but you know, you can be a stubborn dick and just walk away. Your call. I think it's about time I talk about what I consider to be this game's biggest strength, and that would be the Titan fights. Fuck me, are these things cool. I'd argue that these are probably the best boss fights we've ever gotten from a Sonic game. And that includes you, Tail Sky Patrol, and your fucking witch. When Frontiers was first announced, we got a little teaser for the Titans, but I don't think anyone actually knew how insane and fun these would turn out to be. I think the reason these fights are so enjoyable is that they feel like a callback to that mid-2000s version of Sonic. As somebody who grew up during the adventure era of games, I can tell you that Sonic leaned very heavily into that anime Dragon Ball Z type shit. Evil Sonic? Fuck it, do it twice. You could really see this with the boss fights. You had Perfect Chaos, the Bio Lizard, Solaris, a gigantic metal Sonic dragging thing. What the fuck? Look, the games took themselves very seriously back then. I mean, Shadow had a gun. Let that sink in for a second. There was a Sonic game where you were given a gun. Also, they say damn it a lot, which, I mean, my dad won't even let me say that one. The Sonic brand today is vastly different, and it's targeted more towards the younger kids, and most of the games consist of Sonic just making puns and fighting Eggman. No more cool water dragons or tentacle monsters. When I played the first Titan fight and I saw this, I almost had a damn heart attack. This was it. This was the type of feeling I used to get from Sonic games. Getting to play as Super Sonic for every Titan fight is a stroke of fucking genius on Sega's behalf. Usually, Super Sonic was reserved to the very end of the game. Now, in recent years, he has been included as a playable character. It's nothing too exciting. It's pretty much just a faster version of Sonic who won't die and is yellow, but this was even the case back in the Mega Drive games. It wasn't really until Sonic Adventure that we first got to experience the difference between regular Sonic and Super Sonic. Super Sonic only felt more and more powerful as the games went on. I mean, in Sonic 06, he faces off against a literal god. But these fights always felt more like they relied on the story and the atmosphere rather than the actual gameplay. Bio Lizard's fight is iconic, but the actual boss fight itself, it sucks to play. Frontiers was actually able to fix this issue with Super Sonic, and now he's fun to play. Your control isn't actually too different from regular Sonic. You still have access to all the same moves, but now everything is faster and stronger and more yellow. Controlling Sonic while you're flying over the entire island's map, dodging lasers and missiles and listening to Screamo music is just cool. Even if you aren't a Sonic fan, you kinda have to admit that this is pretty sick. Fuck it, even Sonic knows. You get a couple of transitions between the different phases of each Titan fight, and Sonic will use these to show off. I mean, if you want an idea of how cool these cutscenes are, at one point, Sonic picks up a giant sword and slashes a Titan in half. Alright, I didn't know I was playing fucking Final Fantasy. Oh my god, Error! The fights themselves aren't too difficult. You are essentially just button mashing until you win. The only real hard part is dodging some of the attacks. Would be a lot easier if I could see where the hell I was going. Still, at the end of the day, I'm having fun. Zooming around at top speed, smashing into Titans, and using their own weapons against them is just really satisfying. The quick time events are a cool way to break up the fights, and again, anytime this game wants to show off Sonic's personality, I'm happy. Another neat thing about these fights is that you don't even face them as Super Sonic straight away. You gotta get yourself all the way up there. either by climbing the Titan itself or running alongside it. And since you're up really high during these fights, you can see the entire map. It's a shame the final boss is just a fucking Space Invaders minigame. This is stupid. Besides that, I think these are all great. I can't really think of a better Sonic boss fight. I still think the likes of Sonic Adventure 2 and Unleashed have amazing endings, and I don't really ever see those being outdone, but that's more from a storytelling perspective. The actual gameplay for those fights isn't really that great, and sometimes it's actually really fucking annoying. I want the Titan fights to be the new standard going forward. They don't always have to rely on Super Sonic either. You can create cool and interesting boss fights with just regular Sonic. The first few minutes of each Titan fight shows this. And please, for the love of God, no more Egg Dragoon fights. I can't do it for a fourth fucking time. Seeing as how the Titan fights are tied directly into the story, I guess I'll talk about it. In short, I don't really like it. Yep, I know. Look, it's just not that interesting. The Sonic games are pretty 50-50 with their plots. There's games that have really memorable and interesting stories with iconic character lines and arcs, and others have not so good stories. What do you mean you killed like 80% of our forces? I don't expect much when it comes to the newer Sonic games in terms of story. I highly doubt we're ever going to get something like Unleashed again, but I would imagine that when you give us a story that tries to explain the origin of the Chaos Emeralds, you can do a lot better than Aliens. That's right, the Chaos Emeralds came from weird little gooey water guys. The whole cyberspace and dead alien plot just didn't really do it for me. It's not even a bad story, it's just not something that I think suits the Sonic series. Essentially, Sonic is trapped on the Starfall Islands and you have to rescue your friends who are also stuck in cyberspace. Why is only Sonic able to escape cyberspace? Well, because he beat Green Hill Zone in record time. Eggman is here too, but he's not really a villain. Since he's also stuck in cyberspace, they did give him a new companion. It's just Ray from Evangelion, but I actually really like their relationship. The actual main villain is the moon? Throughout the game, you get these flashbacks which show that the aliens once tried to use the Titans to fight the moon. It didn't work. They died. Their memories or souls or whatever are trapped in these little Kokori ripoffs, and while they're pretty adorable to look at, they're already dead. So it's kind of hard to be invested here. Seriously, why would I care if the Starfall Islands get destroyed? There's nothing here. The islands are completely void of any life. There's no people, there's no houses, no towns, not even a fucking subway. You got these little rock guys. Now, they're kind of neat. If you want to make a player care about a story, then you kind of got to give them at least some type of connection to the characters and the world, right? You want to know why I wanted to stop Eggman in Sonic Adventure? Because I explored the game's world. I went to the hotel, the train station, I helped a woman confess her feelings to a guy who works in a burger shop, I talked to the hiker with the funny little hat. Since Adventure has so much effort put into the game's side characters, it's very easy to make relationships with them. But in Frontiers, I don't care about any of this. Everything that you interact with besides the main cast is already dead. Look at Sonic Unleashed. Look at all the different people and cultures. You can talk to every single one of them. While the plot is pretty basic, I do think the writing for the characters is a massive improvement over the shit we've had to deal with in the other Sonic games. Sonic and his friends are actually written like people now. No more standing around and just saying exposition. It's nice to see Sonic written as a character with more than one trait. And that trait used to be just annoying. He's quick to action, but he does listen to those around him, and he actually grows as a character as the story progresses. I think his relationship with Amy has a big part to play in that. Personally, I loved his relationship with Knuckles. The writing and chemistry between these two reminds me a lot of how they acted during the Adventure era and even Sonic X. I really enjoyed any interaction between him and Sage, and it was neat getting to see both their characters develop the more they spend time with each other. Little fucker grew on her, who knew? I'm not really a fan of Tails in the game, but that's not really anything new. He's kind of a hard character to get right. You can tell they tried to fix a lot of issues. Since Sonic Colors, he seems to bounce between this kind of smug know-it-all to a coward who flashes his butthole when scared. I absolutely hated him in Sonic Lost World. They give him the same arc here as he had in Sonic Adventure, where he learns he doesn't need to rely on Sonic and can stand up for himself. To me, Tails was always more likable when he was written more like a little brother type character to Sonic. Heroes in the old cartoons are perfect examples, and I think this type of relationship works a lot better. I get they want him to be the super smart tech guy who builds inventions and helps Sonic kind of navigate different places, but he kind of comes across more like a whiny bitch with a lot of sass. Essentially, he's a discounted version of Coco from Crash Bandicoot. The absolute weakest has to be Dr. Eggman. The highlight of most Sonic games was always watching him and Sonic interact. I think his character got better in every game. He basically carried Lost World and Forces. Some of the most iconic scenes from the games come from these two characters, but fuck me, I don't know what happened here. They took away all of his personality, and they made him into this really dull and uninteresting character. Shit, even the Titans have more going on than him. I do like the father and daughter relationship between him and Sage, but she does most of the work there. It's nice having someone else that he can play off with. It's a lot better than those two retarded robots he spent all his time with. But I just don't get why all of his original personality is gone. Comparing this version of Eggman to the likes of Generations and Unleashed, it's like a completely different character. Even when he does share a scene with Sonic, he's just so boring. This is another thing I really hated about the game, the goddamn voice performances. I'll say this now, since I know it's going to be divisive. I cannot stand Roger Craig Smith's Sonic voice. And yes, I know, it's subjective and everyone can like different things, but there comes a point where a bad casting is just a fact. I mean, imagine if Mario sounded like Wario. You would consider that bad, right? Like, that voice doesn't suit that type of character.
I'm gonna win!
Nothing about Roger's portrayal here fits Sonic. The super deep and monotone voice he gives him is just so far out of his character. I don't understand why they've kept him for this long. He's not even a good actor. I mean, listen to some of the voice acting from this game.
He took your home world. He took your lives. Are you going to let him do it all over again? A first strike position, huh? I mean, those cannons aren't just for show.
Introducing Pizza Hut's new Ultimate Stuffed Crust Pizza.
You hear that? That is bad. And that's not just my opinion. His actual performance is just objectively bad. Ryan Drummond to me will always be Sonic. I mean, I love the man and his whole approach to Sonic could not be more fitting for that character. Again, quick comparison here.
Talk about low-budget flights, no food or movies. I'm out of here. I like running better. Ha! Think I'd miss this? Time to crack that Eggman wide open. Yeah, let's party! All right, Eggman. Let's get this party started. Tails, Knuckles, give it all you got. Full speed ahead.
You tracked the Chaos Emeralds here, right? Let's find out what drew them here.
I know people shit on his performance, but come on, these games were recorded like at the end of the 90s with zero direction. Like, what the fuck is Roger's excuse? The rest are okay, the acting is definitely better. I think the guy who played Knuckles struggled a bit with this direction, but that was more down to how his voice sounded, not the actual acting part of the performance. But yeah, that's my overall criticism. Every character lacks energy, and it makes a lot of the cutscenes kind of boring to watch and listen to. Play it in French, it's way funnier.
T'as toujours eu un don pour ces choses-là. Je vais pas te contredire.
So yeah, that's pretty much Sonic Frontiers. Now, what do I think about it overall? It's pretty good. I definitely had fun playing it. It's an interesting change compared to the last couple of games. I still think the game looks and plays like a PS2 game. There's no real polish here on, like, anything. The most enjoyment I had with the game was finally being able to just play as Sonic and run around. I found exploring these islands pretty fun and honestly kind of relaxing. I think I'm at a place now where I'm burnt out on the usual Sonic formula of just going from point A to point B. Allowing the player to choose where they want to go and at what pace is something that we haven't really seen from the Sonic series. That being said, there are still parts of the game where you're forced into areas that you might not have wanted to go. It sucks because you could be having a grand old time running around and then all of a sudden you get locked into a 2D section. Chaos Island is full of this shit, by the way. One of my biggest criticisms with Frontiers is just how it looks. From the art direction, to the graphics, to the overall presentation, the game looks bad. Especially for something released in 2022. The environments are meant to be more realistic, especially when compared to something like Sonic Lost World, but while modern Sonic in a more cartoony world might not always work, you kinda gotta agree that that game was at least stylized. Frontiers looks way too similar to Sonic 06, like the trailer here is just the first island from the game. I have no problem with a Sonic game that tries to look somewhat realistic, but to do this you either have to have a team that can produce high-end graphics, or work with an art style that's more in line with the budget for the game. Frontiers doesn't really do any of these, and so you end up with a pretty bland and unappealing game. It's not bad, it just looks uninteresting. Unleashed is what I consider to be the best looking Sonic game. The art style here resembles something out of a Pixar movie. The game has beautiful lighting and some of the levels not only hold up 18 years later, but genuinely look gorgeous. Now, compare this to Frontiers and... oh boy, this ain't very good. Excluding the cyberspace levels, because I think they actually do look pretty nice, the main 5 islands don't really have anything going on. There are some places you can find that look pretty nice, but more often than not, you're just running around a large area filled with nothing. Occasionally, you might see a cool rock. Oh no, it fell down. Again, nothing about these graphics warrants the amount of pop-in the game has. I even managed to find a couple of places that just look bad. Seriously, what the hell is this area even meant to be? Even just looking out across the ocean, there's nothing here. Like, Jesus Christ, would it kill you to have maybe a ship go by, or have a decent looking sunset? Like in another Sonic game? Seriously, I just can't say that Frontiers looks good, and that extends to the game's models. I know this criticism has been beaten to death at this point, but yeah, these models are like, what, 20 years old now? For fuck's sake, Sega, just change them already. Why is it that everyone else gets new models and designs? How the hell do you make it look worse than a game from 15 years ago? Even small things like Sonic's animations when performing tricks or when he's breakdancing all seem to have taken a downgrade. The cutscene animations are also pretty inconsistent with their quality. There's times where there's actual movement and you can tell that they're trying to convey some type of emotion through facial expressions. Not sure what this emotion is meant to be, but oh well. Way too much of the game's cutscenes just have characters standing around. And I'm sorry, but for a game studio as big as Sega and for a franchise as popular as Sonic, there is no excuse for your game to look like this. These type of animations are something you would expect from like a shitty licensed movie video game. If you look at some of the animations from Crash Bandicoot 4, a game that came out like a year or two before Frontiers, you'll see just how bad the current standard of animation is with Sonic Team. Not only do the character designs and models all look really good, but the actual animation and scene direction is really nice to look at. You can really see the cartoon influence here. Frontiers is animated like a fucking YouTube Gmod video. I knew the game wasn't going to be exactly of high quality, especially after watching the game's opening cutscene. I mean, in what world did someone look at this and think, yeah, okay. You know, we used to get amazing CGI animated openings. I think the beginning of Sonic Unleashed is a fucking work of art. Sonic Lost World again also looks really incredible. But this? No. Alright? Just, oh, it's awful. By the way, this game cost €60 at launch. Tell me, what's the point of having 5 different islands if there isn't really any change between them? I get it for islands based on a forest, there's not much you can really do here, but when we get to the deserts and volcano islands, why are there no specific level tropes based around those environments? The change in location is basically just cosmetic at this point. Like, why not make it too hot to explore during the day, so you have to stay underground and explore some cool ruins? Then when it's nighttime, because remember, the game does have a day and night cycle, you get to run around on the surface. You could even meet like an Elder Coco who gives you some kind of armor to let you stay cold, and maybe there's a time limit or something. I don't know. Oh, God. Or what about getting to explore the inside of the volcano? You could even snowboard down it like in Sonic Adventure, or have an ash cloud that covers the screen in smoke, so you gotta fight enemies, but you can only rely on sound cues, and you gotta dodge them at the right time. Like, wouldn't that be fun? Instead, we get 5 items that all play the exact same. Every level has the same black boxes and platforms, there is nothing unique about these assets, and reusing them just comes across as lazy. Like, fuck, we're in a forest, would it kill you to have some vines on the rails? Like in another Sonic game? I wish that you got rewarded for exploring the islands. The game has a lot of collectibles, maybe too many, and you are encouraged to get them all so you can advance through the story, but that's kind of all the game offers you. I know when this game was announced, people compared it to Breath of the Wild, and one thing I think Frontiers could have taken from that game was to understand why we want to explore in the first place. The journey is the destination is basically Zelda, right? Like, yeah, I get that you want to get to a certain village or defeat a boss so you can kind of continue playing, but the things you do along the way tend to be more fun. Finding a unique weapon, interacting with people, and doing side quests make up a lot of content in those games. You never really know what you're going to find from exploring or what reward you might get from completing a side quest. But in Frontiers, it doesn't matter where you go. The only reward this game can give you is a bunch of items that I can find anywhere else. Or buy off Bait the Cat. You will never find a hidden item or gain any new abilities here. There's no secret bosses, no cool extra locations, there's nothing. Whatever you can see, or more accurately, whatever the game can load in, is everything the island has. Like I said earlier, I have played enough Sonic games where the focus was just running to the end. At this point, the one thing I want in a Frontier sequel would be to have this type of level design just be like a natural part of the island. I want a full boost level to be just included alongside the more open-ended parts. That way, you can just play these built-in levels in whatever way you want. It would have also been pretty cool if you could just find Big's fishing location on this island. No stupid loading screens, just have them there, out in the open, jerking off. Now, since this game was released, there has been a bunch of DLC and extra content made for the game. This was all free, by the way, so big props to Sega on this one. You might have charged us for Super Sonic, but I forgive you. The DLC ranged from a fun camera mode that lets you take in-game pictures, to a jukebox where you could play tracks from older Sonic games, to some more cooler things like additional costumes. My personal favorite was the soap shoes. I just always thought these looked better than his normal ones. The biggest part of the DLC was the new final story. That's right, they pulled a fucking Kingdom Hearts Remind and gave us a completely new last act. It has a much more satisfying final boss, playable Tails, Knuckles, and Amy, there's some new levels, you get Super Sonic 2. He's just normal Super Sonic, but now with blue eyes. I guess blonde hair and blue eyes really is the way to go. I'll talk about this at some point in the future, but yeah, this is a much better ending for the game. The two biggest updates for me though were the extra control settings and the spin dash. You can now make Sonic carry all of his momentum into his jumps, no more losing all of your speed the second you make a jump. And Cyberspace levels now have a power boost, so they finally play like a Sonic game. Cool. While these are neat, and they definitely fix my main issue with the game's controls, they only came out after the game was released. So, while they make the game more fun, they were only included due to the amount of backlash people had with the way Sonic controlled. The bigger issue is that the control and physics for both the main game and Cyberspace is how Sega wants the game to be designed. Sonic's slow speed and stiff janky physics is what Sonic Team think the game should play like. And you don't get to just avoid criticism because you caved into fan backlash. The spin dash is cool though, it's like a boost but with way more air. You can go really far with this thing, and seeing Sonic just zoom all over the map at high speeds is really satisfying. My only issue though is that you can't unlock this move until the very end of the game. Kind of a dick move, Sega. While writing this video, a definitive edition of Frontiers got announced. And by that, I mean people just kind of saw the game appear in Walmarts. It's just the base game with all the DLC included, and it has a better performance. I haven't played it yet, but if it fixes all the pop-in and runs at a steady 60 frames per second, then I would say this is probably the best way to play the game. Personally, when I do go back to Frontiers, I play it with mods. You can get some really cool mods too, from improved physics and controls to having the ailens actually look like a Sonic game. I was able to have a lot more fun when Sonic controlled like how I think he should have. Plus, I could have the Heroes model and Von Drummond voice mod installed. It's like he's still here. So yeah, go pick the game up. It's reviewed pretty well, and I think it's a great game for people who haven't played Sonic in years. There's a lot of content here, especially with all the DLC and extra features, and you'll have a lot of fun. Also, Sonic can cook now. Look at him go.